Alright, welcome to part 5 of the Game Objects project. In this tutorial we're going to create a cement barrier. I thought that'd be kind of nice to add to my scene here. So I'm going to turn off a few of these layers. I'm going to turn off the column, the oil drum, the crowbar, and the lights, and the ground layer. I think I'm going to keep these two on here. I might select the chair group and kind of move it off to the side a little bit further. But I kind of want to use this as a measurement. I think the length here of these two would kind of be like one of these cement dividers. And if we look at the cement divider here, it's kind of very blocky, kind of like a cube. So that's what you want to kind of think of as like what form, symbol form do we start with? So I'm going to start with a simple cube here. And again, you could look up measurements, actual measurements. I'm just eyeballing this. Nothing to do with measurements here, but I could then scale it out, so I could start to pull it out like this to the certain amount that I want to have it for the length, maybe to about like, I don't know, something like that looks pretty good. Then I can drag this for the height, and I'm thinking something like that will probably be good for the height. Just kind of compare it if I bring it up a little bit to the other barrier. I feel like it'd be a little bit lower than that barrier, but it would be longer. So it might be something like that, maybe a little bit slightly smaller. I don't know, something like that. It looks pretty good. So once I have that, the main part is like bringing out the end points here, which is basically I'd have to add an edge loop here, and then I can do some extrusion to come out. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go to my modeling toolkit again up here, and then I'm going to go into face mode. I'm sorry, edge mode, and I'm going to select the insert edge loop tool I have in my custom shelf. Again, that's under the mesh tools, so here it is, the insert edge loop tool. You can click on it either way, and basically I'm just going to click here and drag down to add a now I want it to be up higher. I want to start to do an extrusion out a little bit higher here, and then have one that'll come out, taper in smaller and smaller. So about there is where I start to see like it tapers downwards. So then I can click out with the arrow tool, right click, go to face mode. I'm going to select this face. I'm going to spin around, hold shift key, and select this face. I can do both sides at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and click the extrude, and then I'm going to grab the blue arrow and kind of pull out the selection a little bit, something like that to some degree. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to edge mode, and I'm going to select this edge, hold the shift key, select this edge, and hit W and kind of just pull them down. So I'm trying to create that tapered kind of effect there. And pretty much right there is pretty close to the overall kind of form. Now, then I would want, if I want to add more detail, right, I would probably want to add some divisions in here. So I'm thinking 2 divisions in the center would be good, straight down. So I'm going to double click on the insert edge loop tool and choose multiple edge loops and select 2. And then I'll click right here, and that'll make sure 2 are right there down the center. Click on the arrow to escape out, and this time actually I need one edge loop on the other side too. I forgot. So I need to have one going across here, and I'm going to release, actually, remember the last setting. So if you double click on the tool, you can set it back to relative distance from edge. Click that, and I'm going to click here, and I'm going to bring it down to about right about to there. Now notice it's following the form of the previous edge loops. So with that still selected, I can hit the R key for scale, and I can grab this top cube and drag downwards, and it'll flatten it out. That's essentially what I'm looking for. At that point I can hit W and then kind of pull it down a little bit further, because what we want to do is we want to pull an extrusion up in this little area here. So I thought it'd be kind of nice to have that kind of finished off there. Now I could at this point go into face mode, select this face, and I'm going to select this face here, and then move around here to the other end, and I'm going to hold the shift key and select this face. So I've got basically those 3 faces selected, and I'm going to do the extrude, and with that selected I have to rotate around this side where the arrow is, and I'm basically going to pull in, I'm going to scale in by clicking on the cube and kind of scale in a little bit, and that will give me a little bit of that tucking in that happens there. And then I can grab the red cube and kind of scale in from the sides, and I feel like something like that is kind of cool. And then I could pull up from the arrow if I wanted to pull up a little bit more, but you can see what happens. It starts to push in that geometry up there. So I'm going to undo by hitting Control Z one step. So what I need to do is deselect this face and the other face on the other side. One quick way to do that is tap spacebar and go to one of my side views here. And so I'll zoom in on this little area here, and then just hold Control and drag over that face, and then go back to my perspective view. So it's just have that one face selected, and then I can basically just pull up like that to get that kind of tapered effect there as it's being tucked in a little bit, something like that. Now I could repeat that action on the two sides here. So if I wanted to have one here and one here, one way to do that I'll show you is I'm going to add, double click on here. I'm going to choose multiple edge loops 2. Close this out for a second. I'm going to click here. That'll create the 2 edge loops. Now if those are the right areas where I want the edge loop to go up, and that looks actually pretty good, then what I can do is I can click on the offset edge loop tool, which again is under the mesh tools here. Down here, there it is, offset edge loop tool. And the way it works is with an edge loop selected, you can offset by middle clicking and dragging across to get that. Let me do this out a little bit, undo that one more time. So drag inwards to get it really close. And for some reason I just don't want to do it. So what I'll do is, if this happens where it sticks, you can double click on this one, hold the shift key, double click on this one, and then what we could do is just scale them in from the side here until they get close to that. So that looks pretty good. Now there is an issue with, I see what's happening here. This line here wasn't, the reason why this was happening was because I forgot to scale this in here. So let me undo that a couple times. There we go. And then on this line here with this one selected, what I can do is grab this scale that way, and that flattens out. Double click on this one, and again flatten it out so it goes straight all the way across like that. That's probably why the edge loop wasn't working correctly. That was my guess. Now when I click and drag on here with this tool, let's see if it works. There we go. And it still seems to be sticking a little bit. There we go. It's not doing exactly the way I want, but that's close. So what I'll do is double click, hold the shift key, double click, and then just hit R and scale them in a little bit. There we go. Now that will give me the better selection there. Now I just have to repeat that action over here with this one selected. Do the offset, middle click and drag, whoop, the other direction. Middle click and drag this way. I'm just going to release. If that happens where it sticks, just double click on that one, hold the shift key, double click, and then scale them in like so. So it looks like this one needs to be a little bit closer, so I can hit W, kind of pull it in, something like that. They don't have to be absolutely perfectly spaced. It's actually kind of nice to have a little bit of differences in there. And oh, I see what's happening here. Again, I forgot. So what's happening on this one, again, it needs to be scaled differently. So if I hit R and drag this, it'll flatten out that line there. And it happened over here too. Double click and flatten out that line. So now we got nice even edge loops all the way around. So at this point, I could select this face here and this face here. Oop, it looks like I forgot to escape out with the arrow tool. So I'll click on this face and this face, and all the way down here. There's a few extra ones in here. Zoom around here. Again, I'm just holding shift to select these individual faces. It just takes a little bit of time to kind of click through. I'm just going to do one of these and you'll get the idea for the other side. But basically, there we go. Now, what I could do is I could delete that area and then bridge across, which might be kind of cool. But let's try the scale with the extrude. So I'll click extrude, click on the blue cube, scale it in on the sides, and then let's see. It's not horrible. Then I'm going to hit G to repeat the action. And then I'm going to grab the blue arrow and kind of push in a little bit. There we go. It seems, because it does seem like it's very subtle underneath. It's not, I feel like there's some geometry underneath there. It's not like it's completely hollow. So at this point, what I would want to do is I would select some verts. I'd go into vertex mode, select this vert. I would definitely want to go back to these lines and fix the edges again, but just go through these little individual verts right along here. Yeah, that's the ones I want. And then hit W and kind of just pull them up like that. And that will give me enough clearance to give you that little gap hole area. Then to fix some of the other ones, like you can see these lines kind of going across here, what I could do is drag over those, hit number 4, make sure nothing else is selected. You can see I have some other ones selected up there. So I'd have to go around here, hit number 5, and then just use my scale tool to fix this. So if I hit R, grab the red cube, I can again flatten it out and kind of even out those the distance between those verts there. You'd want to do it with each line, so like right here, select that line there. Again, there's some underneath the selected. The way you can tell is where my little navigator is. So if I hit number 4, it's down here because there's some verts and it's sort of in between the two. So if I control drag deselect these, notice how the little navigator pivots to those little guys up there. So that makes a huge difference in terms of visibility. So now I can scale the other way and get that cleaned up. Basically, that's what I would do. I would just kind of scale, and kind of even out this distribution a little bit. And what else would I do with this guy? Let's see. Anything else? Oh, the top lines. So if you look at the top lines, they kind of go downwards a little bit. So I'd go to edge mode here and just double click across, hit W, and kind of just pull them down to give you a little bit of rounded quality there. And that looks pretty good. At that point, I might add some more divisions here, especially if I was going to bring this in a program like ZBrush or Mudbox to sculpt. But yeah, at this point, you could add some bevels, because when you add the soft preview mode by hitting number 3, you're going to see some wacky geometry. So I'd want to add bevels all around the edges. Just don't add any bevels on the interior part. So I'm going to pause for a moment and clean up the rest of this geometry and finish that extrusion. We'll come right back. Okay, so here we are. I kind of cleaned up the geometry here. The flow lines are looking pretty good. And what I did is I kind of scaled in the little points and just kind of tapered them a little bit to clean it up. Yeah, it's a little fussy, but basically that works pretty well. Now, somehow what happened was I must have missed some verts because I bent the top line here, and this happens sometimes. So what we can do to fix this is just select an edge here and an edge here, or yeah, maybe an edge here. And I'm just going to hit the W key and kind of pull back on these two edges, and that should evenly kind of space it out just by eyeballing it. And that looks pretty good. It doesn't look like it went up, so it just kind of pushed in a little bit, bent a little bit. And it's okay to have a little bit of those kind of faults in the geometry are kind of nice in some ways, so I don't necessarily mind them that much. So the last thing I would do is add a bevel to this, and what I would do is if I double click on this line, double click on here, double click here, kind of go around this line here and then along here and then go around like that and around like that, and then just add a bevel. So the ones I wouldn't bevel are the lines that are dividing across this way, these extra lines, and these lines going across this way. So you try and avoid that, but you might have to add a bevel around the inside little loop inside there and there to give you a feeling. But let's just add a bevel to the whole thing. I usually don't do this, just to show you what it would look like. So we'll add a bevel to the whole thing, and we'll go to 0.2, and we'll looks like I keep forgetting to hit 0.2. There we go. And then we'll have 2 subdivisions on there. And then when I hit number 3, you can see it looks pretty good. The geometry looks all right. So we have a lot of extra lines that we don't need, but if we turn off the shading, wireframe on shaded, you can see, we got a couple of nice little areas with some bevels to capture the light. Yeah, it looks pretty good overall. But again, I would want these extra lines going across here beveled. So that's why I'm going to undo this. But I just want you to see that, what it would look like with some bevel on there. And then, yeah, there we go. Let me go back to 1. So I will finish this off on my own, and you'll be able to see it in another tutorial later on. But that pretty much will conclude the cement divider.